I bought a house without telling my parents. Then found out they planned for my sister's whole family to move in with me for free. Hi Reddit, I'm Kate, 32, female, from Texas, and I feel like I've spent most of my life in the shadow of my older sister Anna. She's 3 years older than me, and let me tell you, she's always been the favorite. You know the type, smart, social, and could charm her way out of anything. Meanwhile, I've been the responsible one, which apparently is just code for the one who gets to do all the work and gets none of the credit.
Growing up, Anna always got the best of everything.
Birthdays? Hers were these huge backyard parties with bounce houses and pony rides. Mine? A pizza party in the dining room with a cake from the grocery store bakery.
Christmas? Anna got the Barbie dream house. I got a second-hand knockoff with a missing elevator.
My parents would just say, "You don't need all that fancy stuff or be grateful for what you have, Kate." And I was. I just couldn't help but notice that Anna's gratitude was never required in the same way. But the real divide hit me when I got to college. I'd worked my butt off in high school, juggling AP classes and extracurriculars to keep my GPA high. I'd been accepted to a local university and thought I had a solid plan. I'd commute from home to save on dorm costs. Anna had gone to her dream school, and my parents had covered everything. I figured they'd help me out too, right? Wrong. When I brought up my plan to live at home, my mom looked at me like I had just suggested we move to Mars. "If you're staying here, you'll need to contribute," she said, matter-of-factly. Anna got a full ride from us because she deserved it. You need to learn responsibility. I couldn't believe it. I was 18, about to start college, and they were already talking about me paying rent. Contribute turned out to be $400 a month for rent and utilities, and of course, I was expected to buy my own groceries. That doesn't sound like much until you're a broke college freshman working part-time at a bookstore for $9 an hour. I tried to argue. I reminded them how they'd covered everything for Anna, how she never had to worry about money in school. Mom just shrugged. "We gave Anna what she needed," she said.
You're different. You're independent.
You'll figure it out. So I did. I picked up as many hours as I could at the bookstore, sometimes skipping meals to make ends meet. I'd walk past the campus coffee shop every morning, envying the students who could afford lattes and pastries. Meanwhile, I was brown bagging peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and drinking the free coffee from the bookstore break room. I don't think I bought a single textbook at full price. I got all of mine secondhand or borrowed from the library. Every month, I handed over the $400 to my parents while Anna was off at her out-of-state school, living in a shiny new dorm that my parents had paid for. She called me once to complain about how her dorm's AC wasn't cold enough, and I just about lost it. I didn't even have AC in my car because I couldn't afford to fix it. My parents still sent Anna spending money every month. I overheard Mom once on the phone saying, "We don't want her to struggle.
College is hard enough."
I stood there in the kitchen, holding my $1 ramen noodles, wondering why none of that compassion ever extended to me. To make things worse, my parents constantly praised Anna for her achievements. She got a 3.2 GPA in her communications program, and they threw her a huge graduation party with a catered buffet and a DJ. When I graduated with a 3.9 and a degree in computer science, we had a quiet dinner at home. Mom made lasagna and said, "Well, we don't want to make a fuss." Looking back, I think what hurt the most wasn't the lack of financial help. It was the clear message that I didn't matter as much. Anna was always framed as the star, the one with potential, while I was just there. Even when I succeeded, it was brushed off.
Kate's smart.
"She doesn't need help," they'd say. It was like being capable was a curse. After college, I moved out as soon as I could. I found a tiny apartment near my first job and started building my life on my terms. It wasn't easy, but it felt good to finally be free from their expectations. I worked hard, lived frugally, and started saving. Meanwhile, Anna married Josh, who my parents adore despite the fact that he's always between jobs. They have 3 kids now, Emily, 5, Mason, 4, and baby Zach, 2. My parents are constantly bailing them out. When their car broke down last year, my parents gave them money for a new one. When Anna complained about how stressful it was to keep up with 3 kids, Mom and Dad offered to babysit every weekend. I wish I could say it didn't bother me anymore, but it does. No matter how much I achieve on my own, it feels like I'll always be second place to Anna. That's why I don't tell my family much about my life anymore. I know they wouldn't care, not really. So, I've been keeping this pretty low-key, but I recently decided it was time to start looking for a house. I've been renting this tiny apartment for years, paying way too much for what's basically a glorified shoebox, and I've been saving for what feels like forever. I finally hit the point where I was like, you know what?
I deserve this.
Now here's the thing, I didn't tell my family, not because it's some huge secret, but because they can't just be happy for anyone. Everything turns into a group project with them. If I mentioned it, I knew they'd start making it about Anna and her kids and how whatever I get should somehow benefit them. So I figured it was easier to just keep my mouth shut until it was all said and done. Apparently, that was too optimistic. I don't know how this happened, but a woman I work with, let's call her Lisa, managed to let it slip. Lisa is one of those people who's always in everyone's business, and I guess she casually mentioned to someone that I was house hunting. That someone just happened to be Anna's neighbor, and from there, the news traveled like wildfire.
The joys of small world Texas.
A few days later, my mom called me. Kate, she said, all overly cheerful, why didn't you tell us you're looking for a house? I should have known better, but I played dumb. Oh, I'm just browsing around right now, nothing serious. Well, Anna and I were talking, and we have some great ideas for you. You're going to need something big enough for everyone, you know, at least 4 bedrooms for the kids, of course. What? What kids? I don't have kids. She kept going, like this was the most normal thing in the world. You'll need space for Anna's family when they visit, and for us too. Oh, and it'd be great if it was close to Anna's place. I don't know why I was surprised. Somehow, she'd already turned my potential house into the solution for their problems. I mumbled something non-committal and got off the phone as fast as I could, hoping it was a one-time thing. But, oh dear, it wasn't. From that day on, my mom and Anna started flooding me with house listings. I'm not exaggerating when I say it was like a part-time job for them. Every day, I'd get at least a dozen links to these ridiculous houses, huge places with 4 or 5 bedrooms, pools, 3-car garages, the works. It was like they thought I was shopping for a reality show mansion. One day, Mom texted, "Did you see that one on Maple Street? It's a huge one, just perfect." Another time, Anna sent me a link to a 6-bedroom house with a note that said, "This would be so suitable for us. We could finally have space to spread out." Us. I stared at the message for a good minute, wondering how my buying a house had somehow become a group effort. The worst part was they weren't even trying to pretend it was about me. Every single house they suggested was geared toward Anna's family. This one has a finished basement. Josh could turn it into his man cave. The kids would love the pool in this one. Look, Kate, there's even a guest room for Mom and Dad when they visit. It was exhausting. At first, I tried to gently steer them away, reminding them that I was looking for something small, just for myself. But that only made things worse. That's when I decided to stop replying. I muted the group chat and ignored their texts. I figured they'd eventually get the hint and move on. Meanwhile, I kept looking for houses on my own. I'd spend my evenings scrolling through Zillow and my weekends checking out open houses. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, and I made sure to avoid anything remotely close to Anna's neighborhood. The last thing I wanted was to run into someone who might blab to my mom. After weeks of searching, I finally found the one, a small 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It had everything I wanted, a cozy little porch, a sunny kitchen, and a backyard big enough for a garden. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like home the second I walked through the door. I knew it was mine. I put in an offer, and a few nerve-wracking days later, it was accepted. I can't even describe how good it felt. For once in my life, I was doing something entirely for myself, without anyone else's input. Of course, I didn't tell my family. I figured I'd let them keep sending their helpful suggestions while I quietly moved forward. But then my mom called me out of nowhere and said, "We're having dinner next weekend. You're coming, right?" I almost said no, but then I thought, you know what, let's just get this over with. So I'm going to this dinner, and I already know what it's going to be like. They'll probably have a whole PowerPoint presentation ready. Here's the fun part. I'm planning to drop the bomb that I already bought a house. I'm not going to sugarcoat it either. I can already hear the dramatic gasps and complaints. Thanks for sticking around. I'll update you after the dinner. Update 1. Hi again, Reddit. First off, I want to say thank you for all the comments and advice on my last post. I've read most of them, and it's been a mix of eye-opening and hilarious. A lot of you said you couldn't believe how entitled my family sounds, and trust me, I feel the same way. Others mentioned how they've dealt with similar situations, and honestly, it's comforting to know I'm not the only one going through this kind of thing.
Anyway, I promised I'd update you after the dinner, so here we go.
Buckle up, because it was a lot. So, I show up at my parents' house last Saturday at exactly 6 p.m., trying to mentally prepare for whatever nonsense they were going to throw at me. The second I walked in, it was already chaos. Anna's kids were running around screaming, Josh was parked on the couch watching TV, and my mom was bustling around the kitchen. She glanced over and said, "Oh good, you're on time for once. Off to a great start, right?" We sat down for dinner, and at first, it was the usual small talk. Dad complained about gas prices, Josh ranted about something at work, and Anna was whining about how hard it is to manage 3 kids. Zach keeps waking up in the middle of the night, she said, shoveling mashed potatoes onto her plate. We're just so cramped.
I feel like I'm losing my mindestens.
I knew where this was going, but I played along, nodding sympathetically while I focused on my lasagna. Then my mom cleared her throat in that way she does when she's about to make an announcement. "Kate," she said with this over-the-top smile, "we've been talking, and we think we found the perfect house for you." I nearly choked on my water. Of course, they'd come armed with a plan. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Yes," Anna chimed in, "it's a beautiful place, and it's only a few blocks from us. It has 5 bedrooms, a huge yard for the kids, and even a guest suite." Mom jumped in before I could respond. "It's perfect for everyone. There's enough space for the kids to finally have their own rooms, and Josh could even set up an office. Plus, it's in such a great neighborhood, close to good schools." I just stared at them, completely dumbfounded. They weren't even trying to pretend this was about me anymore. "So," Anna said, smiling like this was a done deal, "we can go see it tomorrow if you want." That's when I decided I'd had enough. "Actually," I said, putting down my fork, "I already bought a house." The room went dead silent. Even the kids stopped making noise. "What?" Mom said, her voice sharp. "I bought a house," I repeated. "It's a small 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It's perfect for me." For a second, I thought maybe they'd be happy for me. Then Mom's face turned red, and Anna's jaw practically hit the floor.
"A cottage,"
Anna finally said, her tone dripping with disbelief. "How are we supposed to fit in a cottage?" "You're not," I said, "because it's my house. I bought it for me." Mom jumped in before Anna could respond. "Kate, how could you make such a big decision without consulting us? We've been working so hard to find the perfect place for you." "No," I said, trying to keep my cool, "you've been working hard to find the perfect place for Anna and her family. I didn't need your help. I knew what I wanted, and I bought it." Anna's voice got all high-pitched, like she was about to cry. "But we need this, Kate. Do you know how hard it is for us in that tiny apartment? Emily and Mason have to share a room, and Zach's crib is in our bedroom. It's not fair to the kids." I took a deep breath, trying not to snap. "That's not my problem, Anna. I've worked hard to get to this point, and I'm not giving up my dream house to fix your situation." That's when Dad decided to chime in. He slammed his hand on the table and said, "You're being selfish, Kate. Family is supposed to help each other."
"What's wrong with you?"
I stood up, my heart pounding.
"I'm not selfish."
I'm finally standing up for myself, and if that makes me the bad guy in your eyes, so be it. The room exploded into chaos. Anna was crying, Mom was yelling about how she raised me better, and Dad was ranting about how disappointed he was. Josh just sat there, shoving food into his mouth like none of this was happening. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Mom followed me, shouting, "You can't just walk away from your family like this." I turned back and said, "Watch me." Then I got in my car and drove home, shaking with a mix of anger and relief. I feel like I finally took a stand, but now I'm bracing for whatever fallout comes next.
So, yeah, Tatswertingsstand.
I'll let you know what happens next. Thanks again for all the support. You have no idea how much it's helped. Update 2. Hi again, Reddit. Thanks so much for all your support and comments after my last update. I wasn't expecting such an outpouring of encouragement, and honestly, it's helped me keep my sanity. A lot of you were right, I should have seen this coming. After that dinner, things escalated exactly the way I feared.
So, here is the update.
The first text came from Anna that night. It was just a photo of her kids sitting on their couch, surrounded by toys, with the caption, "Look how cramped we are. Do you think this is fair to Emily and Mason?" I didn't reply. What was I supposed to say? That it was somehow my fault her apartment was messy? That buying a house for myself had magically caused her kids to share a room? I put my phone on silent and went to bed, hoping she'd let it go. She didn't. The next day, I woke up to 5 missed calls from my mom and a string of texts from Anna. One said, "You always think about yourself. I thought family mattered to you." Another said, "Mom is so upset she couldn't even sleep last night."
En 10, the piece de résistance. You ve changet Kate.
This isn't the sister I grew up with. Right, because the sister she grew up with was too busy being ignored to develop a backbone. I decided to ignore all of it and focus on work, but the texts didn't stop. Every few hours, my mom would chime in with her own gems.
You're being so selfish, Kate.
We're all disappointed in you. I hope you realize what you're doing to Anna's kids. You need to reconsider. It's not too late to sell the house and buy something better suited for the family. I muted both of them, but then they started leaving voicemails. It was the same guilt-ridden nonsense, but hearing their voices made it hit harder. Mom sounded genuinely angry, Anna sounded like she was on the verge of tears, and at one point, my dad called and yelled at me for 5 straight minutes about how I was tearing the family apart. It didn't stop there. A few days later, my aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years, called me. She said, "I heard about what's going on with Anna. Can't you find it in your heart to help?"
Family comes first, Kate.
I had to laugh. This was the same aunt who barely acknowledged my existence growing up, and now she wanted to lecture me about family? I told her I wasn't discussing it and hung up. Next came the Facebook posts. Anna posted a photo of her kids squeezed together on their bunk bed with the caption, "All they want is a little space to grow, but I guess some people think family isn't worth helping anymore." The comments were full of sympathy from her friends, who had no idea what was actually going on. Stuff like, "You're such a great mom. Whoever's letting you down doesn't deserve you. How could anyone leave you guys in that situation?" I wanted to scream. She was making me out to be the villain, and I couldn't even defend myself without looking petty. So, I stayed quiet and kept scrolling. But then my mom posted something on her own page. She shared a picture of my house. How she got it, I have no idea, with the caption, "It's so sad when someone forgets where they came from. Family sacrifices so much for you, and this is how they repay you." I blocked both of them immediately, but not before a coworker messaged me to ask what was going on. Apparently Lisa, yes, that Lisa, had seen the post and was gossiping about it at work. Now half the office thought I'd abandoned my family to live in a mansion by myself. For the record, my house is just a cottage, not exactly lifestyles of the rich and famous. The stress was starting to get to me. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a wave of anxiety. I stopped checking social media and avoided my inbox. Even when I was working, I couldn't focus because I was bracing myself for the next call or message. Things hit a new low when Anna showed up at my apartment one evening, unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there with Zach on her hip and the other 2 kids in tow. She looked exhausted, and the kids were all crying or whining about something. "Kate," she said, her voice cracking, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms and stood in the doorway, blocking them from coming inside.
What do you want, Anna?
Please, she said, tears in her eyes, we don't have anywhere else to go. The landlord's raising our rent again, and we can't afford it. Just let us stay with you for a little while. The kids need stability. I felt my heart sink, but I stood firm. Anna, I'm sorry you're struggling, but my house isn't an option. It's not big enough, and honestly, this isn't my responsibility. She stared at me like I had just kicked her puppy. So that's it? You're just going to let us suffer?
I'm not letting you suffer.
I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm not going to let you guilt me into giving it all up. She muttered something under her breath, then turned and stormed off, her kids trailing behind her. I shut the door and leaned against it, feeling a mix of guilt and relief. The next morning, my mom called to tell me I was heartless for turning Anna away. She accused me of being cold and ungrateful and said I was going to regret it someday. I hung up without saying a word. And even as I'm writing this post, their texts are popping up non-stop on my phone. Mom's sending walls of guilt-ridden paragraphs, and Anna's firing off photos of the kids. I even got a voicemail from Dad just now that started with, I hope you're happy, and I didn't even bother listening to the rest.
I can take it anymore.
The first thing I'm going to do tomorrow morning is change my number and only give it to trusted friends and my work. It's clear they're not going to stop until I completely cut them off. I'll deal with the social media stuff, tightening up my privacy settings and blocking anyone who might try to stir the pot, but that's for later. One thing at a time.
I'll update you once I've taken care of everything.
Thanks again for all your comments and support. It's really helping me get through this mess. Update 3. Hey Reddit, I'm back with another update. So, I've been reading through your comments, and wow, you really didn't hold back. A lot of you were mad at me for not blocking my family sooner, and honestly, you were right. After I changed my number, I went ahead and blocked them on everything: Facebook, Instagram, even the random relatives who might have tried to mediate. It felt so good to finally cut them off, but of course, it didn't take long for things to get messy again. I should have known the peace wouldn't last. It all started last weekend when my mom showed up at my house, unannounced. I was in the backyard trying to figure out how to plant lavender. Google makes it look so easy, but I've already killed 3 plants, when I heard someone knocking on my front door. At first, I thought it was my neighbor or maybe a delivery, but when I got to the door, there she was, my mom, standing on my porch with a pie in her hands and the fakest smile I've ever seen. Hi Kate, she said, like she just stopped by for a casual visit and not after weeks of me ghosting. Hi, I said, caught totally off guard. I stood there for a second, debating whether I should even let her in, but she shoved the pie toward me and said, I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I brought your favorite apple. I wasn't sure if I should laugh or cry. My favorite is cherry, but okay, Mom. Against my better judgment, I let her in. I didn't want to make a scene. She set the pie on the counter and looked around the house like she was taking inventory. This is lovely, Kate, she said, running her hand along the back of a chair. You've done a great job. I didn't know what to say, so I just mumbled a quick thanks and waited for her to get to the point. She sat down at my kitchen table and sighed dramatically. I wanted to apologize, she started. Things got a little heated, and I realize now that we were wrong to push you like that. You've worked hard for this house, and I should have respected your decisions. I stared at her, trying to gauge if she was serious. It sounded nice on the surface, but something about her tone didn't sit right with me. Then she launched into this whole speech about how proud she was of me and how the stress of Anna's situation had made everyone act out. But that's no excuse, she said, giving me this sad, almost pleading look. For a second, I felt myself softening. Maybe she really was trying to make things right. But then she hit me with, I was thinking maybe we could have a fresh start.
I'd love to come over again sometime. Maybe bring Anna and the kids.
It'd be nice for everyone to see your new place. And there it was. I tried to keep my cool. I don't think that's a good idea right now, I said, choosing my words carefully. Things are still a little tense, and I'm not ready for that yet. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't happy with my answer. Of course, I understand, she said, but her smile was a little too tight, and her eyes kept darting around the room, like she was sizing up the place. After a few more minutes of small talk, she stood up and said, well, I should get going.
Thanks for letting me stop by.
I really mean it, Kate. I just want us to be a family again. I nodded but didn't say anything. After she left, I locked the door and just stood there for a while, staring at the pie on the counter. Something about the whole visit felt off. For the past few days, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head. Was she being genuine, or was this just another manipulation tactic? The timing seemed way too convenient. She'd spent weeks harassing me, and the second I cut them off, she suddenly shows up with an apology and a pie. It also didn't sit right with me how quickly she glossed over everything that had happened. She didn't even mention the texts, the voicemails, or the fact that I'd blocked her. It was like she was pretending none of it had ever happened, which felt weird.
And the whole thing about bringing Anna and the kids over?
That didn't feel like a casual suggestion. It felt calculated, like she was testing the waters to see how much I'd let slide. I haven't reached out to her since, and she hasn't contacted me again either, but I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Knowing my family, there's probably something else brewing, and I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. What do you think, Reddit? Was my mom being sincere, or is there more to this than she's letting on? Part of me wants to believe she's genuinely trying to fix things, but the other part of me feels like I'd be an idiot to trust her.
Let me know your tukukts.
I could really use some outside perspective right now. Update 4. Hi Reddit, I'm back, and wow, do I have an update for you, hopefully the last one. I wish I could say things have calmed down, but instead, everything has gone from mildly irritating to full-on crazy. I don't even know where to start, but let's just say I'm officially done giving my family the benefit of the doubt. So, you remember how my mom stopped by with that apology and a pie? At the time, I told you all I had a bad feeling about it. Turns out, my gut was right. Something about her visit wasn't sitting well with me, but I couldn't figure out why. She seemed way too interested in every detail of my house, from the locks on the doors to the layout of the rooms. At the time, I brushed it off as her being nosy, but now I realize it was part of a bigger plan. A few days after her visit, I went about my weak ass waters to see how much I'd let slide. I haven't reached out to her since, and she hasn't contacted me again either, but I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Knowing my family, there's probably something else brewing, and I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. What do you think, Reddit? Was my mom being sincere, or is there more to this than she's letting on? Part of me wants to believe she's genuinely trying to fix things, but the other part of me feels like I'd be an idiot to trust her.
Let me know your tukukts.
I could really use some outside perspective right now. Update 4. Hi Reddit, I'm back, and wow, do I have an update for you, hopefully the last one. I wish I could say things have calmed down, but instead, everything has gone from mildly irritating to full-on crazy. I don't even know where to start, but let's just say I'm officially done giving my family the benefit of the doubt. So, you remember how my mom stopped by with that apology and a pie? At the time, I told you all I had a bad feeling about it. Turns out, my gut was right. Something about her visit wasn't sitting well with me, but I couldn't figure out why. She seemed way too interested in every detail of my house, from the locks on the doors to the layout of the rooms. At the time, I brushed it off as her being nosy, but now I realize it was part of a bigger plan. A few days after her visit, I went about my week as usual. Work was busy, so I was mostly holed up in my new home office, focused on deadlines. I wasn't thinking much about my family. Things had been quiet since the visit, and I thought maybe they were finally backing off. Then came Saturday. I'd gone out to run errands in the morning, just the usual stuff, grocery shopping, a stop at Target, and picking up a package from the post office. I got home around noon, bags in hand, ready to put everything away and enjoy a quiet weekend. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. Anna's SUV was parked right in front of my house. My heart immediately sank. I walked up to the door, fumbling with my keys, and that's when I heard voices inside. At first, I thought maybe I'd left a window open or my TV on, but as I stepped into the entryway, the realization hit me like a brick. Anna, Josh, and the kids were in my house. The scene inside was pure chaos. Emily and Mason were sprawled out on my couch, surrounded by snacks and toys that weren't even theirs. Zach was toddling around the living room, chewing on one of my throw pillows like it was a teething ring. Josh was in the kitchen, raiding my fridge, and Anna, she was in the sunroom, rearranging my furniture like she was on HGTV.
What the hell is going on?
I blurted, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Anna looked up, completely unfazed.
Oh, hey Kate.
We figured it'd be easier to just move in while you were out. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said.
Move in? Are you serious?
She rolled her eyes, like I was the one being unreasonable. Mom gave us the key. She said it'd be fine. I felt like I was going to explode. Mom gave you what key? The spare key, she said, gesturing toward the kitchen counter where I'd left it during Mom's visit. We really needed the space, and your house is perfect for us. It could have been bigger if you'd listened to us, but it'll do. And Josh can finally have an office. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Kate, don't be like that, Josh chimed in, leaning against my fridge with a sandwich.
You're single.
You don't need all this space. This house makes way more sense for us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were talking about my house like it was just another one of my parents' handouts for Anna. Get out of my house, I repeated, louder this time. Anna scoffed. We're family, Kate. Stop being so dramatic. We've already started settling in, and the kids love it here. It's not like you're using all this space anyway. I didn't even know how to respond. I was so angry I could barely think straight. Instead of arguing, I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. Seriously? Anna said, her voice dripping with disbelief. You're calling the cops on your own family? Watch me, I said, holding the phone up so she could see. When the dispatcher answered, I calmly explained the situation, that my sister and her family had broken into my home and were refusing to leave. Anna and Josh tried to argue with me while I was on the phone, but I ignored them. By the time the cops arrived, I was shaking with adrenaline, but I was also determined not to let them get away with this. The officers were professional but firm. They asked Anna and Josh to explain why they were in the house, and their story was as ridiculous as you'd expect. We're family, Anna said, as if that was a valid legal defense. Josh kept going on about how I had plenty of space and how it was the right thing to do. The officers weren't having it. They told Anna and Josh that they were trespassing and that they needed to leave immediately. Anna started crying, saying she didn't know it was a big deal, and Josh muttered something about how I was being selfish. I stayed silent through the whole thing, letting the cops handle it. It was honestly satisfying to watch Anna and Josh pack up their stuff, including the snacks they'd raided from my pantry, and shuffle out the door. After they left, one of the officers pulled me aside and asked if I wanted to press charges. I thought about it for a moment, but honestly, I just wanted them gone. I told the officer I didn't want to press charges as long as they stayed away from my property. He nodded and said they'd file a report in case anything else happened. Once they were gone, I locked the door and just stood there for a while, taking it all in. My house felt different now, violated almost. The idea that they just let themselves in without asking, without even caring how I'd feel about it, made my skin crawl. I've already called a locksmith to get all the locks changed, and I'm thinking about installing a security system too. I'm done giving them the benefit of the doubt. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a moment of desperation. This was entitlement, plain and simple. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that my own sister thought this was okay, and the fact that my mom gave them the key? I don't even have words for that yet. I called my lawyer this morning, explained the whole situation, and had a formal cease and desist letter drafted and sent to my mom, Anna, and Josh. The letter outlined everything they'd done and made it clear that if they continued to harass me, I wouldn't hesitate to take legal action.
Anyway, Tatswertingsstand for now.
I'm still furious, but I'm also kind of numb. Part of me is wondering if this is really over or if they're going to try something else. Thanks again to everyone who's followed along and supported me through this wild ride. Your advice, validation, and even the tough love have meant more to me than I can say.
Take care, Reddit.